Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my weekly Node-RED live stream. Hour or so of Node-RED development, bug fixes, doing whatever needs doing at the moment. Just checking everything is looking good. So, yeah, welcome. If first time on watching the live stream on Twitch, do say hi in the chat. I can see a lot of the familiar faces there. Good evening to you all. If you're watching this on YouTube, do like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know if you get all the way through the live, watching the whole hour or so on YouTube, or do you just skip your way through it? Who knows? So what are we up to tonight? Well, we've got 3.0 ever approaching. So we actually need to start thinking about a first beta release for 3.0 in the next couple of weeks, which is always slightly intimidating, but there's a healthy backlog of stuff still to do. A few bugs, a bunch of new features still to work on, but we'll see how far we get in terms of what actually makes the cut for 3.0. As ever, the main driver for doing 3.0 is to line up with Node.js dropping support for their old versions of Node.js. So we will drop support for Node 12. Is that what we're dropping support for? That feels like something I ought to just know. I haven't really thought of the actual numbers for a while. Yeah, it must be. We're dropping support for Node 12. So that's the main driver for 3.0, but it's always a good excuse for us to look at any changes that we wouldn't do in a normal maintenance release. Although we do try and minimize any sense of disruption, but there we go. So what are we doing tonight? Well, there's a couple of bugs I was going to look at. In particular, there's this one that Steve raised a few days ago, which I'm going to grab. Essentially, this is with the new Junction nodes that we're adding in 3.0. In fact, rather than just use Steve's replay, I'm going to see if I can reproduce it and talk through it. So here we have a bit of a messy workspace. Let's just give ourselves a bit of a cleaner space to work in. So let me just refer to Steve's example. Yeah, it's a little contrived, but that doesn't matter. It shouldn't be possible to do this. So if this is the first time you're seeing, these little junction nodes are kind of a special type of node that give you options to help you route wires and organize your wires, but also lets you do things like that. So you can, it just gives you options for tidying up the wiring. However, if I get rid of that node, Steve has identified if you delete a wire, okay. Okay, this is, oh. I'm just trying to arrange this so it's going to visually work. If I delete this wire between these two junction nodes and then drag a wire between them, this wire is actually now headed in the opposite direction to all the others. So messages can't actually pass down that wire. So let's just deploy that, because this is the state we want to come back to each time. It's if I start the wire from that side to that side, it's fine. You can see visually that wire looks good. But if I wire it backwards, I start the wire on that junction and connect it to that junction, then it's treating it as an output where I start and as an input on where I finish. Whereas for a wire, what we really want is that. Yeah, what we want that is that. So one of the problems around all of this, and one of the reasons this bug exists, is when I control click. So I should add, to draw this wire between these two ports, I'm not just clicking on that wire and dragging, because that causes it to move. What you have to do is press and hold Control or the Command key on the keyboard. I then just click and release the button to go into the quick add mode, and then I click on the junction I want it to wire against. That's where the bug exists. When I do that control click on a node port, it's fine because we know that this port is either an input or an output. These can't be both. And this is the problem. Junctions can be both inputs and outputs. And the code currently assumes if you control click on a junction, then treat it as an output. And when you click on, and when you wire to a junction, treat it as an input. Now, yeah, I'm just trying to think through. If I straighten this wiring, and the problem is, well, I say the problem, this is now actually, I've turned what was incorrect into correct wiring, because now you can see there's once again sort of more logical flow across all these wires. Sorry, I'm just trying to rationalize. Yeah, this is the problem, that it lets you do that, which is okay. Here's where I'm now realizing sort of a struggle. I want to construct a. I'm just trying to construct some scenarios where this would be all right. Yeah, let's get rid of that one. Here we have two junctions. So the interesting question is, if I want messages from this top inject node to go to both debug nodes, then I can add a jumper like that. And visually you can see that makes sense. The messages come out down there and they come in down there. If I want messages to come from the bottom inject node to both nodes, I then have to add the wire the other way round. And that's perfectly valid in both cases. So, yeah, so I'm now wondering actually, whether this is a bug. As in, I get the fact if you wire something in the wrong direction, messages won't flow. But it's perfectly valid to be able to want to wire in either direction, and direction have meaning. So, having now just played with it, there is part of me that feels this is actually the behaviour is correct, that you always wire from, you create the wire in the direction you want it to flow between junctions. And if you wire backwards, then the wire is going to be headed in the wrong direction. So Yeah, let me just double check just to make sure. This is Steve's point, yeah, and my initial interpretation of when he raised it was, well, that kind of makes sense. You don't want to be able to create invalid wiring, but it's arguable that none of the examples presented are invalid. They might be incomplete, but they're not invalid. So, yeah. Certainly what would solve it, and as Steve mentions, is arrowheads. So that would be something to look at. And I have got a branch of that somewhere. Let's see. I have a lot of branches locally. I should really tidy this up at some point. Let's see. Oop. Because so many of these have been merged, so unfortunately it's not in my recent branches. Is it? Have I called it something sensible? It's, okay. Well, I either have called it something sensible or I can't see it as I scan down. I didn't call it arrows, no. Did I call it? Actually, there's a pull request, isn't there? Where I've. Is it link effects? Yeah, let's go and have a look at. I think it's a draft. Don't know, is draft? Yep, draft is a thing. Yes, here we are. Link effects. I was right. So now I'm going to rebase this branch on dev, just because it's quite a long way back, and I think, well, this is going to take about 30 seconds due to my slow commit time on this machine for whatever reason. But whilst that chugs away, yeah, arrowheads could be a way to solve this. It might be is the rebase going in clean? The rebase happened clean. Nice. We like that. I was expecting at least one conflict along the way, but of course I can't remember. Yeah, I need to remind myself. Let's go look at the PR and actually see what changes, because I can't remember. Because this changes a couple different things, and arrowheads equals false. Okay, so they're off by default. And have I provided any way to dynamically add them? No. Okay. So let's just fire up view.js. Arrowheads, true. And yeah, this is why it's a draft PR, because it's not exposed properly in any way, shape or form. But right, if we now reload, so we have arrowheads. You can also see, and this is the bit I'm really undecided about, is the change the appearance of what ports look like if they are connected versus disconnected, and having ports behind the node body. I don't know. I think it serves a purpose, but there's something about it that isn't working for me, and I'm not a massive fan of. I'm still uncertain about changing the appearance to have the ports behind the node body. just it's quite a big change in appearance. But anyway, we're not here for the no ports, we're here for the arrowheads. So yeah, so you can see, in fact, it doesn't do arrowheads when you're in adding mode, I don't think. No. And the position, you can see the maths for the arrowheads obviously doesn't know about the junction nodes, so there's a bit too much of a gap. If I try and zoom, yeah, you can see there's a couple pixels of a gap between the arrowhead and the port, which would need squashing down. But if we so if you control click there, then, well, actually if I go and grab one of Steve's examples, let's take this nice convoluted one. Now, I would say the arrowheads, if you're going to have lots of junctions, the arrowheads suddenly become quite noisy. And, yeah. Yeah, it kind of... the junctions become less... discrete's the wrong word, but they become more obtrusive because there's more to them with all these arrowheads. But the key point being, if I wire those two together... and if I wire them the wrong way, then yeah, the arrowheads do make it clearer what's going on. So I'd say I do like a lot the command right click / to delete wires. Just finally being able to delete the thing. Yeah, it's if you go too fast, it doesn't notice you've gone over the wire. But being able to delete wires without taking your hand off the mouse it's a small thing, but I like it. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure I'm going with this. Arrowheads would be one approach, so we should revive the arrowhead work. Combining the arrowhead work with this port rework, I think, is just going to get one bogged down with the other. Partly because I'm just really not sold on it yet. If I around myself, it looks like if you've got a function node with a whole lot of stuff and then start connecting random ones. I mean, I agree it serves a purpose that you can sort of spot what's connected much more readily. I mean, the main use case or main scenario was, say you ended up with a situation like that, then you've actually got a visual cue that function node isn't part of the wire because its ports are showing as disconnected. Now, equally, you could do that, and I'm not sure why that port is... Okay, well, that's just a bug in this branch. That port is now permanently highlighted for some reason. But at least that tells you the wire comes into the function node, but its output is not currently connected. You actually need to add a wire. But even then, that looks to me like this function node is connected to both debug 7 and 8, but if I move the node, you discover it isn't. And yeah, there is no colouring we can do on the port to reveal that. Ultimately, it is just a super shady bad practice to sit nodes on top of wires without them being connected. I mean, that's not an entirely unreasonable position to hold. I don't know if Oh, no, that didn't work. Oh, this isn't working. Why is this not working? What's going on? Oh, errors. Okay, there are errors, and yeah. So the reason bug tables I tried hiding the ports behind was if we were going to colour them in, they suddenly became very dominant, particularly on the edge, like on the function node, on the left-hand edge. They became very overbearing black dots or dark dots right next to the node icon, and it just, yeah, got too heavy. So that's why I tried dropping to the back. But anyway, tonight isn't about this. What am I doing? I'm gonna undo that change. Go back to the dev branch. And I just want to double check what I'm doing. I want to check these errors I'm getting down here are due to some untested bug in the arrowhead code and port code, rather than if it's in the junction code, then we need to fix that because junctions are in. None of the other stuff is. So let's have a look. So right hand click deletes, shift drag adds the port. Yeah, okay, well that's what failed just now in that other branch, but it's working here. So yeah, there's some other bugs to sort out with the arrowhead code. Ooh, missed. Let's try. That's curious. Let's just try and catch them all. There we are. Yay. Yeah, this is shift right click slice, so it doesn't delete the wires, it inserts junctions wherever you cross a wire, it will insert a junction. So you can start doing some very weird stuff. Anyway, back to Steve's original bug. I think I'm getting to the conclusion it isn't a bug, but there might be something like arrowheads that could help it. But it means the documentation needs to say if you're wiring, control clicking on a junction to wire it, you always start, you wire it in the direction of flow. You always start on the source of the wire and then go to the destination. Yeah. Okay. Having come to that conclusion in 20 minutes that actually this is working as designed, I'm gonna switch gears. Let's have a look. There's a few other bits and pieces to look at. So, okay, there's been a bit of discussion. Let's switch gears completely. There's been a bit of discussion. If you were on, I forget, recent live streams, we've added this feature where it's possible for nodes to auto name themselves. So notice how each of my debug nodes, as I add it, is getting a incrementing name. So that all works. Now, Steve raised the feedback that if you copy and paste a flow, then it would be nice that the pasted nodes have their names updated as well. Now, the bit that makes that a little tricky is the code that does the paste part of copy and paste is actually the same code as does the import. So when I import a flow, say import copy, yeah, it's the same code. So we wouldn't want, I contend, if you're importing someone's flow, you probably want to import it as is, and not go around changing names. Now, there is this opportunity, and we already spot where there are duplicates. You could imagine a workflow that lets you, actually it'd be super awesome to be able to click on these to select and deselect rather than force you to click on the checkbox. Anyway, there could be import options to say, oh, and rename any nodes that are clashing. But I think the default position ought to be, if you're importing it, you leave it well alone. You don't change the names. But the chances are, if you're copy and pasting something in the existing workspace, then it would be better to rename it. There is a slight question of what do you rename it to, such as, ooh, errors. Sweet node not found. Oh, ignore. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Who's doing all this? Okay. Yeah, I need to ignore this sweet node not found. That is not related to what we're doing. Yeah, so the question is, if I copied and paste debug 7, should we do the debug 7 -2, as in it's the duplicate, which at least means we retain the original name to some degree, or should it rename them all using our naming naming algorithm that we've already got? So I just paused as the front door's just opened. I wasn't expecting the front door to open, but who knows? Well, I know, but it's fine. Yes, okay. Let's dig into this a bit. So copy and paste. Right, I just need to page this into my brain. Is it in here? Here we go. So when we do, let's make this readable for you. So when we paste from the internal clipboard, this is the function that it's called. We call import nodes. Clipboard is a string, which is the JSON of what we're importing. And we pass in this extra flag, generate IDs, yeah, sorry. Yeah, we use import nodes, we pass in the JSON of what we're importing, but we pass in this extra flag that says generate IDs because yes, we're importing this JSON again, but we're telling it we explicitly want to generate all new IDs for these nodes, which is different to when you're importing and we try and keep the IDs the same unless there are clashes, which drives that extra dialogue you get. Right. So here's import nodes, the new nodes, which is either a string or an object, and the options object. Which yeah, pause. I thought I had options better documented than that. That's a little poor. Oh, here we are. Generate IDs. Let's just add that to the doc up here. That's what confused me. Where's to automatically generate new IDs for all ported nodes. So we're also going to have generate default names, I think, whether to automatically update any nodes with clashing default names. I think that properly describes it. And we're going to, default behavior will be false. Yeah. But now we need to think a bit about how we actually make this work. So to do that, if we come into View Tools, generate node names is the function we added to do this, that you can give it a node and it will, well, you give it a node or an array of node, and here it says, so it only sets the name if it's currently blank, and it uses that pattern, palette label n. So what we want here is something slightly different. What we want, rather than only set the name if it's blank, we want it to only set the name if the current name clashes. Yeah. So now we want to have two different behaviors. So we're going to pass in an options object. And I know this isn't the most idiomatic JavaScript way of writing it, but yeah. Now, is this how we want to do it? Sorry, I'm just thinking through. So it's either if the name is blank or if it's the name clashes. So we're going to say rename blank and we're going to set the default behaviors, which is rename blank is what the current code does, and rename clash, for want of a better term, the default behavior is false because we don't currently do that. So then yeah, generate default names, nodes to import. We finally get down here. We know nodes to import is going to be an array of nodes. So we're going to invoke this action. And we're going to pass it arguments of nodes to import and an options object that says whatever those two options were. Rename blank false. And rename clash true. I'm like 80% sure I can use red.actions.invoke and pass it these extra arguments and have them pass through. We'll check that in a sec. But we only want to do this if options generate default names is true. And then in here, we're just going to do a console.log of options. I will do node and options. And in fact, we need to fix some logic here. So I'm just going to stick a return in there. At the moment, this expects node to be exactly one node. We are now going to be furnishing it with an array in some cases. So yeah, there's a bit more extra logic needed in there. Let's just see what we've got at this point. So if I copy and, oh, we have nothing. We have nothing because why do we have nothing? We have nothing because let's go find paste, because we needed to turn on the generate default names to true for the paste action. So copy, paste there. So you can see, awesome, in the debug down here, you can see we've passed in an array of one node, and we've passed in and we've passed in the arguments. Let me just deal with the message I just had to reply to. Talk amongst yourselves. Sorry about this, everyone. There we are. Cool. We're making progress. So now when we paste, we'll call import nodes. We're passing in the extra argument. We go down to import nodes. If that extra argument has been set, generate default names, we're going to now invoke the generate node names. We'll pass it in the array of nodes that we're importing, and we'll toggle the options. So we don't want to rename blank ones. We'll leave them alone. We do want to rename anything that clashes as far as default names go. Good. Right. So one task at a time. At the moment, this function assumes node, if it's provided, node is a what does it assume? It assumes node is just a single node, that you're invoking this for a single node, in which case you can see here, if node is provided, it wraps it as an array. If not, it goes and gets the current selected nodes, which is always an array. But now node might already be an array. So, what are we going to do? We are going to... we could just do a horribly nested tertiary logic here. Perhaps not. Perhaps we're going to say... if node, if array is, if not array is array, node, nodes equals, and wrap it, else nodes equals the current selection of nodes. Steps through that. So we assume you're going to pass in something. If you pass in something and it's not an array, then we'll make it an array. Else, if you haven't passed in anything, we'll go, yeah, that all holds up. Okay. So now we come down to how do we actually apply this rename blank or rename clash logic. So see, rename clash is we could cheat a bit. So what I was thinking with rename clash is, does that mean for every time we find a node that looks like a default name, we have to go and check whether it clashes or not? However, can we cheat slightly that can we assume if we spot a node with a default name that it must be a clash and that it should be renamed? Because I'm just looking through. Okay, some more complication though. This action assumes you're working on things that have already been imported, and it generates history events. We don't want it to be doing any of that. We want it purely to be, we just want this bit of logic which does the renaming. We don't want this second half which does all the history events. So we're going to have to pass in another flag called, let's say, generate history. Oh, interesting, which I've already called it down here. Okay, no, we don't need to pass it in. I already had a bit of protection here to deal with knowing whether we need to generate a history event or not, based on does this node already exist in the workspace. And given we are, oh man, I'm going to get wrapped in, we are going to get wrapped in knots here. We're going to get wrapped in knots because at the point I'm calling this, we haven't yet given all the nodes new IDs, because that happens down here. Yeah, that happens down here. So this logic, which determined whether to generate history or not by saying, does the node already exist? Well, it will, at this point in time, this node ID will exist because it's what we're copying. So what? Right. I think we do want to be explicit. Generate history false. In here, generate history. I think wants to be yeah, okay. Down here, options dot generate history, and so that logic, this logic here will still kick in for the default case, but us now passing in false will disable generating history. Yeah, that should do it. Oh, this is getting fiddly. Okay, that should do it. So now we're coming down here, and we're going to say we want rename clash. So we only want to rename all of that is about trying to find what the non-clashing number would be, so we don't need to touch that logic. It's here. If name equals null, name equals blank. So options.rename blank, and so that's one condition. You're saying rename blank and the name is blank, or options.rename clash and we can do, so this is the regex we've already built to test whether it matches the default pattern for this given node type. Okay, so we're going to do the renaming if rename blank is true, which is the default, and its name is blank, or we're asking you to rename clashes and the default and the current name matches the regular expression for the default name for a node of this type. I think. And then just double check as we call it. So we're not going to be renaming blanks, we are going to rename clashes, and we're not going to be generating history events. So let's see what all of that adds up to. So if I select those two nodes, copy and paste, it's not done anything. Okay. Right, let's step through this a little. And yes, I could run this in a debugger and be terribly proper about it, but I'm just going to brute force it. We care what nodes is and we care where the options are. Let's just make sure the logic I've added around handling arrays is still good. So yeah. Oh, no, that's interesting. I think. Right. I add in a debug node, and you can see our action's been called once. If I copy and paste, the action's been getting called twice. One it's getting called twice. I think this is a different bug. If I ignore that error. If I copy and paste that, it's getting named at that point. Okay, we're invoking the action twice, which is not what we want. You can see it's getting invoked this first time with generate history false, rename clash true. So that's the one we've just added. So that is getting called. But the debug node is then being renamed because the action is getting triggered a second time. The reason it's getting triggered a second time, and this is very annoying, is because the debug node has somewhere on add, it invokes core generate node names on itself. So that's how the debug node opts into having its name auto-generated whenever it gets added from the palette. But the problem being, if the user has cleared the name and they copy and paste, well, I say the problem is it's now, because there are absolutely some users who prefer to leave the name blank because they prefer seeing, say, that complete message object. Yeah, they want to see that. If I copy and paste those two nodes, it's doing the one thing we don't want it to do, which is wiping out the name. Ugh. Darn. Okay, that's unexpected behaviour in the bagging area. How can we, should we, do we, and all the other questions, how do we handle that? Because semantically it's perfectly correct we're calling onAdd because we've added a new instance of the debug node. It might be a copy of an existing one, but we're adding it. And if you're copying one with a blank name, then it's absolutely it's absolutely cool for that one to be sorry, I'm sort of thinking in a half sentence because right now I can't quite pick apart the logic here to get it to do the right thing on all occasions. See, that's the easy case. Just dragging it from the palette. Out of interest, for the debug node, I'm just going to disable the debug node invoking that action for itself. So, yeah. So you can see adding and copy and pasting nodes now don't change the names. If I copy and paste one with a matching name, even though we're calling the rename action with rename clash true, you can see that's not working. So let's focus on one piece of this at a time. Let's work out why that's not working. Let's just examine what these different if statements evaluate to. So the first one we'll print out is the rename blank and the name is blank. And the second one we'll print out is whether rename clash and it's matching the test. And it's not getting that far. Okay, so something else has gone wrong. Nodes for each. No. Okay. Okay, you got me. The problem we've got now is we're calling, okay, this is back in our import nodes. We've given it the new node JSON to import. We've parsed it, and then we're calling the invoke on it. And what this is going to do, we're not passing in already imported nodes, we're passing in raw node JSON. Whereas the actual function has been written to work on nodes that have already been added to the workspace. So they already have the type definition attached to their objects. So we can either update this to work on generic node JSON, which isn't out of the question. Or I'm just thinking, what if we move this whole logic to later? Because, like I said, this function has to do a heck of a lot of work to do the right thing. You're right, Bob Tails, this is a can of worms. The problem being that copy and paste, changing the name of blank nodes, is behaviour we have in there today, which is explicitly what we don't want it to do. If you copy and paste a node in the workspace, it shouldn't touch the name unless it clashes. So it is a can of worms. Unfortunately, it's not. It is very much one in which the worms have escaped, and there's no putting the lid back on the box. That's not the same. Yeah. Okay, well, let's do one piece at a time, I think, because should we modify this function to be able to work on generic nodes? Well, it's easy enough to do. If we say node def is red.nodes. I say easy enough to do. Red.nodes.get type. Is that going to do it? Yeah. Get type n.type. Then, in fact, we do it this way. Though, yeah, I think this is going to do it. So if I copy and paste debug 7, we get debug 9, which is true, which is correct because we have a debug 8 up there. If I copy and paste that, we now get debug 10. If I copy and paste all of them, we get debugs 11, 12, 13, and 14. Yeah. Now the ordering, I mean, that's going to be interesting. If I select the nodes in the order 12, let's do it with just 2 nodes. Oops. So debug 11 and 12. If I select 11, then 12, copy and paste, you can see I get 13 and 14. If I select debug 12, then 11, copy and paste, notice I now get, numerically, they haven't been kept in the right order. They've switched order. So again, just it's these little fine details of if you've got a carefully crafted flow with things numbered in a particular order, the order we process the nodes is now dependent on the order you selected them, you could get different end results based on what you selected. And I don't like having different end results based on the order you select something. So, yeah, this can of worms is becoming a gallon drum of worms. Yeah. Whose idea was this feature in the first place, honestly? Right. It's alright, Steve. It is a good feature. Just devil is ever in the detail. Let's take a bit of a stock take. I could run on and on this one, but I've got to drop. Got some other stuff to do this evening. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a strikeout, this live stream. Not actually going to make any code changes yet. We're not close to merging anything. I think there's definitely a need to fix the code that changes that is renaming. Well, I've commented it out, so that's why it's not doing it there. Yeah, there's a clear conflict of interest or conflict of behaviours between adding a node like that and copy and pasting a node like that, in that we want to generate the name when you're adding the node. We don't want to generate the node when we're copy and pasting. And the simple fact is, at the moment, we've got no way of knowing. There is no way to distinguish. The only thing I can think of, because that rename on add is happening because that's exactly what the node is asking to happen in its on add function here. The only thing I can think of is being able to pass in a boolean here that says, or an object that gives you a hint as to what's caused this node to be added. Is it being imported? Is it being loaded? Or is it a brand new node? And then make a bit more of an informed decision. Yeah, so I need to noodle on that a bit more. No, I don't think there's a quick answer here, unfortunately. Right. Well, that's the breaks. That's not everything gets wrapped up in a bow in an hour. So need to dig in. Oh, so Steve taunts me at 9:05. Maybe a quick issue, keyboard binding issue 3473. If it's keyboard related, it won't be quick. I can tell you that now. 3473. No, it's going to take me too long just to read it to figure out what the issue is. Assign control enter while already assigned to another shortcut with a different scope gets stored but clearing the operating deploy such possible to be shaded. Just deploy. Oh, and that's a different issue. Okay. Yeah. It shouldn't be possible to ever trigger a deploy if the deploy button is disabled. The fact there's some other funkiness with the keyboard shortcut, okay, and that might be a route that enables you, but whatever the fixes are for one should have nothing to do with fixing the deploy button to make sure it can't get triggered when it's disabled. Yeah, this isn't a quick one. The way all the keyboard shortcut actions are scoped and managed between the default key set, user provided key set, it's a bit of a mess. I've done it on previous live streams and got myself in a right muddle. So, yeah. But to be honest, Steve, these are two separate things, and it would be worth breaking this. Deploy shortcut works when button is shaded. That's an issue all of its own right, and arguably a much higher priority thing. But yeah, I'm not going to dig into this now. I need to hang up. So there we are. Them's the breaks. I will be back next week. Hopefully, a little more. Well, we'll have a bit more success and make a bit more progress. Like I said, 3.0 is on its way. Beta, we need to work out timings of it all, but hoping, we have the long Easter weekend coming up in about 3 weeks. So, yeah, at some point we just need to make a decision which side of that holiday break we're going to target the beta for, before various people have holidays, and then get the beta done. So there we go. Right, I'm going to say good night to y'all and get on with some other stuff tonight. So Thank you for joining. Thanks for the chat. Like I say, not always ending in a pull request, but progress nonetheless. Even if some way from a conclusion on most of those items, progress nonetheless. Have a great week. See you all next week, and bye for now.